What's going on, Maddie? Welcome in, welcome in. What's going on, Salt Life? What's up, Roger? Someone can just give me the go ahead with a mic test, just making sure we're all clear. Welcome in, welcome in. Appreciate it, Roger. We'll get started here in just a second. Pretty light week. Today was a little bit intense this morning before we pretty much calmed the storm. What's up, Busy? Oh, nice job. Hit that like button. All right, so it might be a little bit of a slow week here. I know that there's not going to be much people here. It's a holiday week. A lot of people are not really trading per se. So we'll make it brief here. We'll make it pretty short. I'll run through a lot of things pretty quickly here so we can cover what I was expecting to reach out. And then we'll pretty much call it a day here. But starting out real quick, S&P Futures, we wanted to go ahead and see if we were actually going to continue making new highs basically these past few days. And that actually started here when we had that last dip that we ended up getting was November 10th. We finally look like we're breaking that trend, that uptrend, in which we pretty much saw that beautiful gap up that we had with Jerome Powell returning for his next term. And then after that, we pretty much just saw a whipsaw. Bit robot. Oh, Roger, if you can just let me know if I'm good there, appreciate it. But like I mentioned, we had that little spike here with Jerome Powell returning. Sounds echo. Better? Better? All right, there we go. I don't know why that is. I got to figure something out there. But like I was mentioning, we had Jerome Powell pretty much pump the market here, as he usually does, in which he's returning to his term, his next term. And so the funny part about that was that we had that massive spike this morning. And if you ended up chasing calls there this morning, you kind of got a little whipsawed if you didn't monitor your position, if you hit a stop loss, if you didn't even have uh, your actual if you have a stop loss and you didn't actually monitor your position is what I was gonna mean to say, right? And we ended up getting that whipsaw, and that pretty much was pretty much just a straight line down that we had just around that lunch hour there. And so hopefully those of you that ended up chasing, you actually were able to exit out of those positions fairly early before you ended up getting hit, and probably your positions ended up out of the money. And then the other thing was that for those of you that hopefully stayed a little patient, then you probably ended up buying that drop and you ended up getting a nice little pushback to the upside, in which some tickers actually got a V-shaped recovery, some were just a very small type of recovery, especially if you looked around big cap tech. They were fairly the recovery was fairly weak across the board, and we ended up closing down. Nasdaq closed down around 200 points to end the day. So looking at the charts in particular, you see I still had that expanding, broadening wedge here on S&P. But what's key to note here is that we were in the middle of the wedge. Now we're approaching support. So we look like we're pretty much breaking the uptrend here. I do want to see if we end up breaking the support line. I do have a key little level of resistance here right around 46.51 is going to be my level of support that I want to see, in which we'll retest that support level we break as resistance now. And then the zone that I actually want to see if we get further decline into the Thanksgiving week here, then I'm looking under 46.16 between range of a lower range of 46.04. Okay, so those are going to be the two ranges I look at, the level of support that I'm looking at. But key thing is breaking the support trend line that we have. That's part of that expanding broadening wedge. Okay, then the other Nasdaq, in which we saw how much Nasdaq dropped about 200 points. And why is my... Okay, I was about to say, are we stalling out here? So if you actually notice here, we actually did break the trendline resistance. That's one thing to note here. You see that little trendline that we had. We actually broke it, and we broke it pretty convincingly here. Okay, so if I go down and I pretty much had my fibs just lined up, just looking to see where we're going. If you see, I have my highlighted zones that I was watching. So we're approaching my next fib that I actually have at 16,348. I wanted to see if we're going to get down to that level. If we break below there, then I do fear that it's going to be a pretty steep ride down to my next fib here at 16,269. But if we're able to hold this range that we're currently at, and this, which I want to say is a bear flag, if it doesn't play out, then hopefully we're able to hold this range as our demand zone, and then that'll push us back towards the upside. All right. So ideally, I would want to see us at least hold this 16,365 level, and then we can consolidate here, in which we get a nice bounce going into tomorrow. Now, given how futures are looking just a bit, we want to see if it escalates overnight, if the sell-off is really going to persist, or if we just get the algos pretty much just bought it up and we get a nice little bounce going into tomorrow. All right. So let's see what it is. But going in through a few tech charts that I'm going to have lined up, you'll see how the trend has really broken, in my opinion. Starting out with Amazon. And I think I could look at this on the 4 hour. Probably looks a little bit more defined. Let me just stretch out the chart here just a bit. There we go. So as you notice, we ended up having that massive push here last week. We got into testing near the recent high, in which we got up to 37 as 3762. I did see calls going out to 3800, 3900 for this week. It looks like they were just a matter of chasing. They were above ask. Maybe they were particularly hedges for what they actually had a put position. And so this was a pretty steep sell-off going into today. So what I'm going to be looking at is retesting a key support level here. So I'm using this middle peak here off of this double bottom formation that you see. This was the first bottom, second bottom, and the middle peak is what I'm using as our next support level. So I'm going to be looking to see if we're able to hold 34.95. If we're not able to hold 34.95, then we're likely coming down towards 34.97. All right. So those are the two key levels that I'll be watching here. I want to see if we're able to hold those two key levels on Amazon. Ideally, I would want to end up getting a dip entry here if we're able to hold this 35.45. It may not be ideal given how the other trends have actually broken. But rotation is also another factor here because we saw how Amazon sold off early, even on the morning pump. We saw Netflix sold off on the morning pump. And if I'm not mistaken, also Google sold off on the morning pump. So it may be a little bit of a rotation here. Maybe they do give Amazon the way to run once it hits that support line. And while the other names continue to drag lower. Okay. Another one that I'm watching is also Shopify. This one's actually a little interesting because of the fact, if I pull it out to the daily here, you actually have a nice little leading diagonal. And if I actually bring up a little image here that coincides with this, that looks almost identical, you're pretty much looking at this formation right here. So this is exactly what I have up on the chart here. It's the leading diagonal. You have the wave 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I pretty much put it in zone. I boxed it in to show you the reversal and at what point they pretty much reversed. And so I'm looking to see at what point it's going to end up breaking the trend. And I think it was looking a little bit better as far as my support levels. Yeah, they were a little more defined here on the 4 hours. So at what point they ended up breaking the lower band of the box on each resistance level. So I'm going to look for a bounce here particularly. We may end up getting this bounce right up to about 1655 or so. A nice little recovery if Nasdaq can actually hold up its part. But as you see, you have a long ride down towards support, and then you also see that you end up breaking that support line before you get a nice little recovery. So that's something to keep in mind here. As you see, I mean, the pattern pretty much coincides with the example that we have here. So it's not looking too good, but I do like the short-term bounce as you see. You had a bounce particularly in the middle here, not here. So that's why I'm gonna look to see if it's a sharp reversal, or if we're gonna continue to just gap down. In which tomorrow morning will really tell you the further weakness on Nasdaq, and if that's gonna really have an influence to actually make the stock bounce, or if it's gonna just continue to just bleed out and we just pretty much flush straight down to support and we break it. Okay. So I want to see that either a sharp bounce or it's going to end up just continuing to gap down and we're just going to bleed out. All right. So I also did send an alert here under 1533, then that's likely going to continue that blood like Gaston's really calling for right now in chat there. Under 1533, then we'll see this really start to continue its blood. But that was a sharp pullback from the resistance level, a $95 drop, and that started really early in the morning, even on the morning pump. All right. Another one is Tesla, and this was actually a beautiful one here. I pretty much just wanted to show you what I did today as far as Tesla, just scalping Tesla. Can I go down? I could probably go down to the 10-minute, yeah. So this morning I was actually watching it, and if you heard me on live, I was calling out the ascending triangle that Tesla actually had. We had that beautiful little pop out of the resistance. The mental number here was 1200 at the open, and I knew that it was going to end up getting to 1200, but we ended up receding back into the ascending triangle, and that flush was just beautiful. You had the initial breakdown, you had that beautiful little retest in which I got in, and that was just a steep drop. I was not expecting that kind of drop off, so I did end up selling early, but that was just a massive drop that we ended up having, and I know that pretty much coincided when the market just decided to just nosedive. All right, but as you saw, we had a nice little V-shaped recovery, and if you see the two orange lines here, we had a little of an expanding wedge here. If you want to call it a broadening, a little megaphone action. We ended up having a little A, B, C, D, E action in which once you hit the E at the top of the resistance, that's when we ended up flushing right into close here. So that was a beautiful setup here on Amazon today. A textbook, two different patterns in the same day here. It's usually a little bit awkward to see that, especially on Tesla, but they ended up playing out beautifully, in my opinion. So keep it on watch here. We'll see what Tesla really does. I think it's a little bit range bound still. I expect us to get down to 1122. If we end up breaking 1122, then it's going to get pretty bloody. So keep that in mind. And then the key level for the resistance is that 1202 level at that high. All right. Just continue to go through really quickly here, and I probably get to the 4 hour, just showing you different patterns. Looking at another broadening wedge action here, and I want to see this one if we end up flushing down towards support. If we get under 66, 668, then that'll be a flush. We're at 673 right now, so about another close enough to another $5 move that we're looking at to the downside. If we break that, then we get a flush right now to support. So that's one to keep on watch. I do know that liquidity is a little bit of an issue with Adobe, so just be a little bit cautious of that. But again, we want to see Adobe break under 668, and then we'll flush right down to the support line that it has. Next one was Facebook. Facebook has a little megaphone action. I actually really was hoping that this one was going to run today. I know that Avery was all over it as well. We ended up having that little falling wedge action from earlier last week. We got that beautiful spike out of it. We just weren't able to break out of the expanding triangle here, the expanding wedge, and we ended up waking off right near the resistance and pulling back. So I set an alert pretty much forming a support trend line. And so I'm going to look to see if this one gets under there. If it really gets under 338, then it's really going to start to flush, and we can definitely jump into that one on puts. So as you see, I'm hoping that it doesn't go all the way down here, in which we end up breaking down to 300 as the wedge pretty much inclines that we're going down towards support. But this one's a little bit more of a wait and see approach here. Let's see what we're able to do. But I want to see the breakdown on the support trend line, and then we'll see exactly how far down we're going. We also do have a gap fill here as well under 329, so that's something to keep in mind as well. All right. Another one was Microsoft real quick. This is one that also has an ascending channel. We actually flashed that breakout. As you see, I highlighted it right there. So I want to see the continuation off of this one, looking for support near 337. And then once we get to 337, then it's likely that we'll get a retest of resistance that was prior support. So let's see how this one plays out. But 337 is that mental number that I'm really watching, and then that'll be the potential bounce that we end up getting. Uh, Two more real quick. And Boeing, I pretty much posted this one on my Twitter as well. But I was just really looking at this one towards support here. That's where I'll likely see if I take a dip entry on it. But looking at 202, that's really the level that I will potentially look to scale in on a position here. But 202 is the mental number that I'm watching on Boeing here for that trendline support off of this falling wedge action. So I just want to highlight that. And then the last ticker that I wanted to outline was Roblox. Probably get down to, yeah, that 1 hour looks fine. We pretty much had that ascending channel as well. Pretty much a similar action to Microsoft. As you see, that one candle is actually uh, showing a little bit of a breakdown here. So we want to see if there's a little continuation filling down to this wick down to 117.32. We hit that support level right around 116.80, and then we end up retesting as resistance for the channel before a further downtrend. All right, so I'll be watching this one as well. I know Roblox has actually gone away from me a lot of times, and I'm always usually looking at it at night, but then come morning hours, I end up forgetting completely about Roblox. So I definitely have to set an alert on this one, and actually I'm gonna set it right around here so I can see it as it's going down to fill the wick. Let me actually set an alert real quick. Yeah, I set the alert, so that's fine. So I'll set the alert here. I'll watch this one as we continue to fill down the wick here at 117.32, and then I'll see if we end up getting the bounce back towards resistance. So I'll keep an eye on this one there tomorrow. But other than that, that's all I was watching going tomorrow. Uh, Not swinging much this week as well, since it is a short week. You definitely want to be careful, especially swinging pretty far out of the money calls, because theta will literally destroy your position as well. All right. We also had a lot of beautiful rapids that went off this morning. I mean, they literally killed it with the rapids. I don't think any one of them actually failed. They literally were all bangers this morning. Tesla hit twice, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Nvidia. So on that massive pump, we literally just scaled right through tech with rapids. So that was all beautiful moves. If you hopefully caught those, I know that Avery was also calling out GME, so that was a beautiful one as well. So hopefully you ended up catching that with him as well, because that moved about $17. So that was just a beautiful move as well. Let me take a look at Neo. I'm gonna just look at two tickers tonight because I did cover quite a bit of tickers. I'll look at Neo and then I'll see if anyone has one more particularly. If not, then we'll call it a night. Neo was actually a newsletter play. Not that I really want to go over it, but and I'm not looking for the small little move that we have here. But in particular, to me, the move that I'm really looking for is over 43.86. That's really the move that I'm looking at. If we don't end up getting over that 43.86, then you're pretty much still within the downtrend. There's nothing that I'm really watching here. You're still in a defined downtrend until you end up breaking that resistance line. All right, so around 43.86, if you want to say ballpark number 44, that's really the level that you're watching on Neo. Until you break over that 44, it's pretty much either chop or it's downside action. All right, and then last one real quick, someone just called out. I'll look at Dkng, and this is pretty much just a nosedive that I'm looking at. If I know that the other trades also called this one out not that long ago, but we do of course have that head and shoulders action, the left shoulder, the head, the right shoulder. If I'm looking for your next level of support, you're looking for support right around this level here of 34.89. So at 34.89, that would be the point where you really want to see if you end up scaling in, or at that matter, especially have a stop loss. This name has not been doing too well. It's pretty much been like a little bit of a second motion of Roku. As we see, Roku's just nosediving as well. So you're just trying to catch a knife. This is basically what you're doing with DKNG. So 3049, that's where your knife catches, and then I would caution having a stop loss in place, because you may end up getting raped if you do not have a stop loss in place here. As you see, it literally just straight lines down. So you are catching a knife right now. That's literally, whether you consider it a butter knife or a butcher knife, I don't know. But that is a straight line down, and I would not touch that, not even with a dollar. Other than that, though, I'll call it a night here, guys. We'll be on live tomorrow. Hopefully, it's not a dry day in which the price action is like what it was this morning, in which we just got that massive pump and then just a quick drop, and everything else was just a slow recovery. Hopefully tomorrow's a little bit more of a better action. The only thing that does worries me, as you saw that I went through a lot of the tickers here, is that we're potentially breaking a lot of supports right now off of that drop off that we had today. So keep that in mind. Don't try to force the position to the upside as well. If it's not there, then don't take it. Don't try to go for weeklies as well. I would pretty much caution going out at least towards next week. But other than that, the last thing that I actually just want to mention, because we also did, we actually realized as far as the algos triggering, so that those of you that pretty much have trouble using the algos, the rapids, the unique, and also the major at that moment, we actually noticed, the things that you really want to pay attention to in the first 30 minutes more so, or I want to say the first hour, would be just the rapids. Pay attention to those rapids like you saw that they went off this morning and they all hit. You pretty much set a limit order on those rapids. Pretty much I usually do it about at least I want to say 10% under, 5% under of what the current price is. And if you set those limit orders, especially on names like Tesla that are highly volatile, you'll catch those drop offs. And that's how you end up capitalizing on those 10% gains. But those are the things that you want to look at in the first, I want to say hour, more so or less that they usually come in. But those are the rapids you want to take and look at during the daytime. Usually after that first hour, then you want to look at your own personal trades, the Fortunas, and the major flow in which I particularly look at those level threes to fives that you really want to pay attention to because those usually show where the bigger buyers are because they are higher level trades. So that usually signifies larger amounts in premium that's being placed on those orders. And then the last 2 to 3 hours is primarily uniques. That's what we've noticed is that those last 2 to 3 hours and power hour in particular is when the uniques actually come out. So if I were to give you the layout here, that's pretty much what we'll look at is you want to go rapids in the morning. You want to look at major floor, Fortuna, and personal trades during pretty much during the market hours after the first hour. And then the last I want to say 2 hours of the day, then you look at unique. All right. So that would be my layout for you guys. And for those of you that are a little more concerned in which, what should I be looking at in particular times of the day, that will be your scenario right there for you. So I'll leave you guys with that. Other than that, I will see you guys in the morning on live. Hopefully this sell-off does not continue because I know it's going to be a little brutal going, especially going into Thanksgiving. If they really just cause a sell-off going into Thanksgiving, that would really blow. But granted, they pretty much gave a lot of money out these past few days. Market literally was just setting highs after highs. So it was expected. It literally felt like a sell the news on this Jerome Powell pump that it was. So let's see what we get tomorrow, and we'll be on there calling out the action, seeing what there is to really get our hands into. All right. But other than that, you guys have a good night. Enjoy some football tonight. Get some rest, and I'll see you guys in the morning. All right.